You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This very day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will cut you down, and I will strike off your head. This day I will deliver the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals of the field, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All of those gathered here today will know that it is not by sword nor by spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will deliver you into our hands. Trust. David had it, and he won against a giant in a battle in 1 Samuel 17. And if we have trust, we will strengthen our relationship with God, and we will find more peace and steadiness in the midst of our stress. And speaking of stress, if you are a student or professor, welcome to finals weeks. Finals weeks are like that last lap in Mario Kart when the music speeds up, the pressure's more intense, chaos ensues, random things like the projects and exams are being thrown at you, and you feel like you are speeding along at 100 miles an hour, about to careen off the edge of Rainbow Road into the endless abyss of space. Good times. But if you're not a college student, no matter what age you are, I'm sure that you will find yourself in many stressful situations. Maybe you're taking your kids to their never-ending sports games. Maybe you have some health and financial issues. Maybe you are having family struggles. Maybe you're grading 100 million projects. You got this, Jeremy. You can do it. Finish strong. Or maybe there's just a bunch of other things in life. So if you're feeling stressed at all about anything, you are in good company. And I am here to share a little bit about trust and the tangible difference that it can make. So, being honest, I have to admit, I feel like a hypocrite at the moment. I have been struggling to trust God even in the past few weeks, and especially as I've worked on the speech. A little ironic, hate to admit it. So please know that I'm not trying to preach at you today. I'm just trying to come alongside of you and give a couple tips and talk with you. But I've learned about it, I've researched deeper into it, I've read the Bible and been taught by God, and I've had to live it out in really hard situations, and that's helped me grow and become more knowledgeable in it. So first we're going to talk about what trust is, and then a story of how I had to trust God and the benefits of that, and finally why we should all trust God and take time to Sabbath even in the midst of busyness. So what is trust? Let's take a deeper look at it. Trust, according to Kaplan and Friends in 2021, and their presentation on human-machine interactions, involves an individual in a position of vulnerability, or the truster, and a person on whom they must rely on, the trustee, despite circumstances which may place the truster in some kind of potential for harm. Now, we know with God this is a little different because he's not looking to do us harm. There is no potential for harm done by him. But it's a vulnerable position to be in, and it can still bring about pain because we have to give up things that we want to surrender to him. And trusting is an action that we do that has so many benefits in our lives, including all relationships, obviously, but especially our relationship with the Lord. We experience less stress, less fear, less anxiety, and instead we can gain peace, faith, strength, and comfort when we trust in him. Isaiah 26:3 has followed me this school year, and it says, "You keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is fixed on you, because he trusts in you." Trust is one of the most vital parts of our Christian walk, and if we don't have trust, can we really have a deep relationship with God? Trust is also part of surrender, and it leads to deeper faith. I can't just surrender to anyone. No offense. I can't just pick somebody from the crowd and say, "I'm going to surrender everything to you," because, no offense, I don't really know or I might not trust. But in a similar way, we cannot surrender to God unless we know who he is and that he is capable of our trust. And time again in his word, in our lives and in those around us, we can see that he is trustworthy. Let's think about it. He's created the entire world. He sustains every little thing. He is outside of all of time. Like time doesn't, what? That's so weird. He has all power and authority, and yet he cares for us. He knows us. And he loves us so deeply no matter who we are and what we've done. Trusting does not come from knowing what is going on. Trusting comes from knowing who God is and what he is capable of. And I know that it is terrifying to surrender, but remember that God is not looking for any or every opportunity to backstab us or to do us harm. He genuinely has our best in mind, and his plans are higher than ours, and they are always good. So knowing that God is trustworthy, We shouldn't place our full security or faith in anyone or anything else other than God, even good friends or leaders. Now, I'm not saying don't trust your friends. Don't get me wrong. Please trust your friends. But you cannot give them your full trust in the way that you can for God, because idols will never satisfy, and they will always let us down. So I'm going to ask us to think about something and then raise your hand. So first, raise your hand if you've ever been hurt by somebody or if they've betrayed your trust. Okay? Now raise your hand if you've depended on yourself for something and it didn't work out. Yeah, human relatable experiences. Because if we look to ourselves and others, we will be severely disappointed and hurt. We are futilely putting our trust in sinful and broken people. But instead, trust looks to God and finds peace, strength, contentment, and so much more in Him and what He has done, is doing, and will do, both now and forever, in His Son, Jesus Christ. And that was stated in an article by Wellham in 2020 called Trusting God. This is actually something wild that God revealed to me as I was working on this. Not trusting God stems from a pride and control issue. Not trusting God is saying that something is safer or better off in our hands or other people's hands than it is in God's hands. And we do not acknowledge God in the process, and not acknowledging God is pride. And this is silly because in reality, can we do anything ourselves? No, we are completely, totally dependent on the Lord. So trust has to be hand in hand with humility then. It's giving everything to Him, saying that He knows what's best, has the power, authority, and control, and that we are not God. We have to allow Him to hold and care for the things that we give Him and that He already has control of. And we have to understand that we are too finite and too foolish to be able to do anything more than fruitlessly strive and worry. And guess what? Worrying is a sign that we don't trust God. And if worrying is not going to even gain a single hour to our lives, why are we worrying and thinking that it's going to care and solve the things that we are worrying about? And let's break that down more through Proverbs 3, 5 through 6. It combines these ideas of trust and control in both of these verses. Proverbs 3, 5 through 6 says, "Trust in myself." Wrong. Trust in the Lord. With part of my heart? No. With all of my heart. Every single part of it, even the parts I don't want to show anyone or even God. And then, do we lean completely on our own understanding? No. We cannot, but in all of our ways, again, big or small, acknowledge God and He will direct our paths. We cannot lean on our own understanding because, as we've stated, we are too limited and we don't have skills and abilities. And acknowledging God isn't just saying, "Oh, hey God," and then going your own way doing whatever you want. It's humility because instead of choosing what you want to do, you're making Him Lord of every aspect of your life, seeking His wisdom and approval, bringing Him into the decision processes, reminding yourself that it's not about you, and submitting to His ways even if it goes against what you want. And He will direct our paths. Not only does that mean showing us where to go, which thank goodness He does that, but it's also being in control of all of our details, holding on to us, caring for us, and being in control. All of this will grow our trust. So let me ask, are we trusting ourselves or others, or are we trusting God? Finally, do not let fear stop us from trusting God. Imagine with me that you are in a boat. I don't know about you, but I like sailboats. So we have our big mast, we have our sail, we have our riggings and our lines and our rudder. It's safe, it's comfortable, we're going along, what a day. But this boat represents control, comfortability, the known, and fear. Now I know that fear is a human experience, and it's not going to completely go away even when we trust God. Because sometimes we have to bring our big emotions to God and say, "God, I don't know what's going on, and I am mad and hurt, but I trust you." And it's despite our fear that we are called to step out of our boats and to do something that God wants us to do that will challenge our trust. Do you guys remember this story of Peter in Matthew 14? Peter's kind of a wild guy. I mean, he chops someone's ear off. But he gains my respect when he says, "Lord, if it's you, call to me to come to you on the water." And Jesus essentially says, "Okay, bet." And so Peter has to step out of the boat and starts walking one tiny little step at a time on the water towards Jesus. He knows Jesus. He's his friend. He's his Lord. He's seen him do miracles and has power. And Jesus is not looking to harm him. So Peter knows that Jesus will not let him drown, and he trusts him. But the story takes a turn. Notice with me that as soon as Peter takes his eyes off of Jesus and looks at his circumstances, the winds and waves, which are scary and overwhelming, he starts to sink. It is not a result of trusting God that causes him to sink. It is his own flesh and fear and doubt, not trusting or acknowledging Jesus, the same powerful friend and Lord who calmed the waves previously in chapter 8, was right there and was in control. So let us be like Peter in the beginning of the story, who does not let fear hold him back, nor his view of the circumstances, but he trusts God enough to get out of his boat of comfortability and take those scary steps in faith. So now that we've looked at what trust is, let me tell you about a time when I had to trust God, which is every day, but here's an example. So this past winter, I was very fortunate enough to go to Colombia with a good friend. My boat, or the known and what I had control of, was the details of where we were going, when we were going, and how long we were going for, 1 month. That was it. I did not know a lot of things, and those were the winds and waves. So I didn't know my family's friend that we were staying with, or friend's family, sorry. I didn't know what we were planning on doing, so I didn't know what to pack. I didn't know the language or culture. My Spanish is not great. And I had no idea what I was going to eat because I have 9 food allergies. I can't even go to a friend's house without stressing about what I'm going to eat. So this was a great opportunity for me to fully trust in God. And I did. I said, Lord, if you want me to go to Colombia for a month, knowing that I have allergies, I know that you will provide. So please help me. And he did. What I learned is that when I trusted God and I followed him in obedience, despite the winds and waves, and surrendered to his plans, I had less fear and stress and grew closer to God. I had a great trip, had food at every meal, really good and new food, and God was a God of abundance, and he can bless and provide for us in ways that I could not even imagine. So I've shared about what trust is, and then a story about a time when I had to trust God. So now I want to challenge you all with a way that we can practically trust God by resting. Sabbathing is a commandment, but it's also an invitation, and it's an act of trust, because we have to give up the time filled with so many things to do and give it to God. When we carve out time to rest, we say no to the idols of control, of busyness, of productivity, and instant gratification. We take time to refocus our hearts and lives on him, and glorifying and praising him, listening to him, and intentionally communing with him. We have an increase of peace because our mind is not fixed on God, or because our minds are fixed on God, and we are not worrying about our circumstances. Resting has so many benefits for our bodies and minds. They are literally wired for it. But if you're anything like me, rest is the first thing that goes when you get too busy. So your brain will be able to focus better, remember better, be more creative, and process information well, which Boynton states in a 2022 article called Why Taking Breaks is Important. Now I know we're crazy busy, so it's not going to be possible for us to take a whole day or even half a day to fully Sabbath. But here's what we can do. I'm going to challenge you right now. Take out your calendars, your planners, your schedules, whatever. Look for 30-minute time chunks, or those really awkward, 45, you can't do anything. Look for those time chunks and do things that bring you rest, joy, and life, but intentional time with God as well. And it might seem like a waste of time in the moment, but I promise you that adding rest and spending time with God, even in little ways, is so significant and impactful for your life. And God will provide. Every time that I've Sabbath, God has provided. Rest is not earned, and it's not something that we can only get when we've finished everything. We have to choose to do it. And we don't Sabbath to do our work, but it does help make life a little bit better. So please partake in the gift of rest that God has given to us. Now today we've talked about what trust is. I shared a story about a time when I had to trust God, and finally why we should all trust God and take time to Sabbath. David had trust, and he won against Goliath. And if we have trust, we will strengthen our relationship with God and find more peace and steadiness in the midst of our stress. Trust is truly a vital part of life. And it's hard to grasp and do because relinquishing control is terrifying, but we can and should be doing it. So, as the busyness continues on, because that is life, and you feel so very overwhelmed, trust in the God of Israel, but also the God of us, who holds the entire universe and knows us and loves us and will provide what we need. When the battle seems too big and everything is on you, remember 2 Chronicles 20:15b, which says, "Do not be afraid or discouraged because of this vast army, for the battle is not yours, but God's." And Isaiah 26:4, which says, "Trust in the Lord forever. The Lord himself is a rock eternal." So whatever your Goliath is in the next few weeks, trust in the Lord and that he will help you, and like David, he will give you the victory. Thank you.
All right. Now we got the pleasure of engaging and interacting question. We get to learn more, hear more from Karis and what she has to share. So who would like to begin? A couple of minutes for questions and answers.
When, as you've been developing this presentation and thinking mainly on trust, what are the indicators that you found that indicate that you are in trust or outside of it? I know you mentioned stress and other things like that, but like if you had to do your top 3, your top 5 that you found beyond even just a couple.
I think peace is a huge one. When I am stressed and worried, obviously it's going to come, it's natural, but when I'm fixing my eyes on God, I have just like this supernatural deep sense of peace and knowing that I am okay and like I'm not the one in control and that's how it should be. And just being reminded like through the Word, so many passages of like just encouragement and that just fill me up when I know I'm trusting God. And then the ability to hear His voice more, that is blocked when I'm distressed and like thinking about my own like problems. But when I'm fixing my eyes on Him, I just am able to hear Him so much better and just to really feel alive and like refreshed and at peace and calm. So that's good. Yeah.
Where do you find the balance between trusting God without being like, okay, God's got it, not going to worry about it, and being proactive and still focused on things and worrying about things you need to without it overtaking?
I wish I had an answer to that, but that's been my struggle over the past couple weeks, so I'm still learning. Yes.
What made you choose David? I feel like there's a lot of examples of trust in the Bible, but what made you choose David?
That's a really good question. I know I was researching for my abstract speech for like what trust was, and I think I was in that book of the Bible for my devotions, and I came across that. And the Lord just like highlighted like, this is how you fight your battles. This is like how big and significant trust is. And then from there, for my interp, I was like, oh, I can act this out. And so then, as you remember, I was trying to play both David and Goliath, which was very entertaining to watch. You guys missed that part. And so then just realizing again, like David went in as a child, but he had so much trust that God would be able to give them the victory, even though none of the soldiers could take him down. And does that like challenge me in my faith of like, why am I not trusting that the big, huge God is bigger than my big circumstances? So that was convicting and really good. So, yeah. Yes.
I think one of the things that's interesting about David, there's one of the things I was thinking about. You did a really good job.
Thank you.
But when you think about David's life as a model of trust, sometimes things don't go well for us. And sometimes we're in circumstances, I mean, God allows human institutions to fail and human individuals to hurt one another and bad things to happen to good people, right? And if you think about David's life, and in my own devotions right now, I'm in the part of David's life before he's become king, and so many of the Psalms are written when he is like hiding in caves, and he's already been told, like, you've been chosen, but he still isn't there yet, right? It's God's timing. And so I think that, part of the other side of that is sort of trust with perseverance, and even when things aren't necessarily going well. And so I don't know if there's a question there necessarily, but we talk a little bit about that part of like, how is it that you draw strength and trust when things are murky and it feels like the present circumstances, like you talk about feeling peace, how do you find peace in the middle of chaos and tumult?
Man, I wish I was better at that. No, that's good. That's good. Really good thoughts. I think making sure that I'm in the Word and that I am praying and that I am communing, like even just like, I try to tell God everything, even if it's like just ranting about like the little things, because bringing everything to Him reminds me that it's not on me. And then also the perseverance that you talked about. I think sometimes obviously I still struggle to like have the perseverance in the midst of that, especially this semester, oh my word. But looking back at everything that I thought, like how am I gonna get this done, and this is terrible and overwhelming, but remembering that God has made a way and has been with me. Not only has he made a way, but his presence goes before me, and that is huge. And so realizing that I can depend on that, and that brings perseverance and trust. And then also one of my favorite verses, which is Romans 18:8, which I thought I had memorized. But it talks about like we cannot compare our present sufferings to the glory that is to come. So no matter what we are dealing with in life, and just like those struggles that we're in, it cannot compare to heaven. It cannot compare to Christ's suffering. Christ suffered way more than I ever will, willingly. And so realizing that helps me keep a good grasp on like what my circumstances actually are, and like they are a speck, and God cares about our specks, thank goodness, but realizing like this is nothing in the light of eternity, but also that Christ and God like genuinely, we can come to them with our lament, we can come to them with our pain, we can come to them with our struggles, and they still care. So that's been huge. But good question.